Meantime, you look at the summer of 2023, and it's shaping up to be the summer of strikes. From Hollywood to the mailroom, more than 650,000 American workers are either threatening to strike or have already done so, most notably like the Screen Actors Guild. It's a wave of union activity not seen in the U.S. in decades and will be sure to test the power of big corporations. So joining us now for some insight is Seth Harris. He is Distinguished Professor of Practice at Northeastern University. He is also the former Deputy Secretary of Labor under the Obama administration. Seth, it is so good to speak with you. I'm curious, when you look at what's been going on across the country and indeed the world, how much of this is happenstance versus a couple of thematic factors that are driving the activity, like, for instance, inflation?
Well, I don't think it's inflation, but I think there's some happenstance, and I think there's some other factors at play. The happenstance is that a number of very, very large contracts happen to be expiring at the same time. The Hollywood contracts, the UPS contract with the Teamsters, the big three contracts with the United Auto Workers, all coming due at essentially the same time. So we're seeing a lot of negotiations around very, very, very large contracts. But I don't want to mask the fact that we are also seeing a significant increase in worker activism around the United States. Some of that is being manifested in very aggressive negotiating stances being taken by these unions at the bargaining table, but we're also seeing it in organizing by workers, including in industries where we haven't had a lot of unions: Starbucks, Amazon, Trader Joe's, Apple retail. We're seeing it all over the country, and we're seeing it also in some companies that don't have brand names that we're not reading about in the headlines or seeing on Bloomberg TV. So I think all of those factors together are influencing it, and let me also say unions have more support now than they've ever had before. That's also influencing workers' activism.
Unions have more support than they ever have before. Is it simply because we're talking about a younger generation as opposed to the last 30, 40 years?
Young people are leading the way in supporting the labor movement, but it's true across all demographic groups. And I think we underestimate how important the pandemic was to changing people's minds or to influencing people to be more supportive of collective activity. A lot of workers really felt that their employers didn't treat them right during the pandemic. They were more worried about profits and their own survival than they were the literal physical survival of their workers. They didn't provide them with PPE. They put them on work schedules they shouldn't have been asked to work. They put them out into dangerous circumstances. And folks really got angry. At the same time, corporations were making monstrously huge profits, record profits in some cases, and not sharing that money with their workers. And so workers are saying, we want a fair share. We want to be treated right. And they decided that the only way they were going to get their voice heard was to come together with their coworkers and organize a union.
Well, to your point that unions have more support than ever, do you see this as a long-lasting dynamic, or is this just sort of the perfect constellation of factors that you are seeing this moment erupt across the economy?
You know, I'm really bad at making predictions, so I'm hesitant to say how long this trend is going to last. But we have seen a long-term upward trend in support for the labor movement over the last decade or decade and a half. Folks are looking for solutions in their lives. There's a lot of discomfort about the state of the economy, the state of workers' personal economics, their family economics. They're worried about their futures. They're worried about their kids' futures. And the labor movement presents a solution. Now, for a long time, people talked about the labor movement as something like a museum piece, not mattering anymore, being more interested in protecting itself than in protecting the workers. I don't know that that was ever true, but that was certainly what the popular media was talking about. But now I think a lot of workers are saying, you know what, if I want to get ahead in my life, I need to stay and fight. Now, 4 million workers a month are quitting their jobs and going out and finding better jobs. But a lot of workers want to stay and fight, and the only way to do that is to come together with their coworkers.
Well, that's exactly where I wanted to go, which is the strength of this economy. I mean, we're looking at a U.S. unemployment rate at 3.6%. We know that the Federal Reserve is trying to take the edge off the labor market, and you're seeing this huge collected effort right now. But if the labor market ran into some trouble, if people were losing their jobs, do you anticipate that would take the steam out of this movement? I know that you don't like to make predictions, but curious to hear your thoughts.
I don't. First of all, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we are watching a soft landing in process. We're just not willing to call it that yet, but that's essentially what we are experiencing. We have very low unemployment, very tight labor markets, high quits, low layoffs, and still we see interest rates climbing a little bit. We think the Fed is going to bump the interest rate maybe 25 basis points in its next meeting. But, I think there would have to be a fairly dramatic change to the labor market, a massive increase in unemployment, huge numbers of layoffs in order to change the circumstances that we're in right now. Workers have a lot of say. They have a lot of power. And if they can quit a job, they can strike. If they can go back to school with the support of their employer, they can get a better job. So I think we're going to have to see really dramatic change, and I don't expect that. I think that at most, if unemployment does go up, it'll be by a few tenths, and I don't think we're in line for a recession. So I'm pretty bullish on workers' bargaining power.
Seth, you went to Cornell for your undergrad. You studied at the Industrial Labor Relations School. So you could make the argument that you were more prepared than others for the dynamics in a changing labor market. How prepared are corporate leaders, the CEOs that are negotiating with these union leaders, in understanding where the workers are coming from, understanding the history of the labor movement, and being able to engage with them in a productive way?
I think they're doing just a terrible job. And I'll give the example of the studios. It certainly seems that the heads of the studios were utterly shocked that their actors went out on strike. I think they expected the writers' strike, but they were surprised that the actors didn't accept what they thought were very generous proposals, but they were wrong, and it was not something that the actors were willing to accept. I think, frankly, the best organizer for Workers United at Starbucks has been Howard Schultz, who's been going out and trying to persuade baristas that they don't need a union when they feel very strongly that they do. So a lot of these corporate leaders have frankly gotten a little too comfortable believing that they run the world and that workers' voices are not going to be heard. Now, let me say that perspective has been reinforced by the fact that the law has made it very difficult for workers to organize. Union density has been declining. We have for a long time had soft labor markets. We've had hostile governments and courts for unions. And so they were sort of getting, I think, a little too comfortable with their status and their privilege. And now workers are kicking back. And I think we're going to see some meaningful changes as a result of that.
So very quickly, like it or not, these corporate leaders are going to have to engage with the labor movement. What's the number one skill that they need to acquire as they do so?
Active listening. They have to sort of break out of their billionaire bubbles, and they have to get directly engaged with the bargaining committees for these unions. They have to listen to their workers more closely. And I'd like to say I'd like to see them respect the law a little more closely. There are big brand name corporations that are regularly violating labor laws in America. And that's just unacceptable. Morally, ethically, legally, from a business ethics perspective, there's nothing good about that. So a little active listening and maybe a little more active listening to their lawyers.
All right, active listening. Seth, really appreciate your joining us. Seth Harris is professor at Northeastern University, and he is a former Deputy Secretary of Labor under the Obama administration.